Attention human, prepare yourself for the Double Pipcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Double Pipcast, where almost every week we catch you up on the goings-on within the Transformers TCG universe. This week we have a very special episode, a very special guest. We've got Daniel Arnold, the winner of the Energon Invitational for 2019, on the Double Pipcast with us. What's going on, Dan?
Hey, how you doing? Nothing much. Just happy to be here. Happy to have a good conversation with you.
Yeah, hey, I'm happy that you're here. I've got a couple of good questions, and hopefully you can fill in the listeners, myself, on what it takes to be a champ. So, rolling right into it, is it true that this is not your first, not your second, but your third major Transformers TCG event for the year?
Yeah, I would say that. I was at Origins, I was at Gen Con, and I was at EI. So yeah, I was able to compete in all three and succeed in all three, to my standards at least. So, yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you who are listening that aren't aware, not only did Dan win the Energon Invitational with a Optimus Prime focused deck, he also came in second place at Origins this past June with an Optimus Prime deck.
Yep.
So Dan,
And
go
for what
ahead.
it's worth, top 16 at Gen Con with an Optimus Prime centered deck.
Okay, was that Battlefield Legend or did we
No,
go
it
with
was
the
it was
general?
general. It was General Optimus. Yeah.
Okay, so not Gleaming Commander Optimus though.
No, not yet.
Yeah, awesome. So, hey, besides winning, what was your favorite thing about the Energon Invitational event over there at PAX Unplugged?
Well, I've been to PAX Unplugged all 3 years now because it's a hometown for me. So when the event started going, it's like a fun atmosphere. But as a whole, I think just meeting like I've met a lot of people throughout the year, but there were still some that I hadn't met, and some that guys that I talked to online from time to time. And like really, the coolest thing I think is like the guys that I did meet like at Origins. For example, Adam Eichenberg, he's a Dallas guy. Like I've been to his store in Dallas. I played with him, so it was really just fun, like seeing him again and catching up again and stuff like that, and some of the other Dallas guys too that I've come to know and just like even like our team isn't all based out of Philadelphia, so like it's not like I get to see everybody all the time. So even like Gabe and the PPG crew with George Machado and them like coming up and like staying in the house with them, and it was just like a good time. And like it's not always all about the cards. Like it's about what happens after cards and what happens before cards, and just having those fun conversations, interactions with everybody. It was just a blast all weekend.
Yeah, so you're putting the faces to the names, greasing some palms,
Right.
talking it up, catching up,
Right.
and by your team, you're talking about Vector Sigma, of course, right?
Yep. Team Vector Sigma. That's
Okay,
us.
okay. So you guys had a good time. You guys went out afterwards. If you had some energy.
Yeah, we had like planned all along to do this like happy hour at the field house, which is like right around the corner from the convention, and like that started at 3 o'clock. So like obviously when we made all the arrangements, like we didn't know they were gonna separate the semifinals for like between two rounds. It's like basically like I played in the semis and then Stefan and Ian played in the semis. So like there was like a lull period where the finals didn't even start until after 3 o'clock. So we had to actually send like Vince and Palmer to the field house to just like make sure we still kept our area
Squad.
and everything. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, well, you guys just go and we'll get there when we get there. So,
Yes, that's
but
funny.
yeah.
That's cool. So it sounds like you had a good time. And Watsy was there, right?
Drew and Matt were there. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys were able to kind of get the inside scoop and sit down with them
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to Drew now a couple different times, and I've met Matt at Gen Con, and I was able to speak with Matt at Gen Con. But like the whole weekend, they were there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday also. So like we were able to talk with them like all weekend. Anybody was. They're actually very, very uh friendly and forward with everyone. So they're always conversing with like anyone that wants to talk to them, which is really awesome for the game, to be honest.
Oh yeah, for sure. Anytime that they can not only be in the same place, but to interact with the group is awesome. And we've had Drew on the podcast a couple times, and
Yep.
he is a very, very awesome dude.
Yeah.
It seems.
Yeah, Drew's a funny guy.
Yeah. So your team, Vector Sigma, I know reading, you gave credit not only for part of your success, your deck list. You gave credit to someone else, and you'll have to remind me of their name. But I'm sure your team helped you in scrims and deck crafting. What did that process look like?
So for us, pretty much like from the day that Siege was released, we had gotten together on that Friday. We had gotten together that Sunday, so we were doing our best to try and get together at minimum once a week, like in live sessions. If we could make up for it, we would go 2 times a week. We had weekly meetings, discussing what we had found, if someone had some type of idea. We had like a minor amount of like online testing. I talked to Scott Landis pretty much every day about something Transformers related. So it's really just about like staying up and just always being committed to one another and doing your best to, like, if someone wants to try this, like just aiding them in the right direction, and if someone wants to try that, it's all about just trying to take the negativity away of like things that like you may have found that didn't work, but someone else is like still kind of holding on to. Like there's that line where you're like, all right, like this isn't working for me, but like maybe if you try it, this, that, and that, you might find something different. Oh
yeah, it's a little engine that could.
Right.
Belief is half the battle.
Right.
What would you say is more important, or how would you break it down in a ratio? The deck, the characters, or the person piloting the deck? Is it a 40-40-20? How would you break it down?
That's a good question. I want to say that piloting is pretty important, because you can give the same deck to 10 different people, and 5 of those people might not understand half the deck. And you could see the difference very easily, even from like a turn 1 aspect of what one person would play and value over another person. So there's that. I do believe the deck is important, and I know, like, just for us as a whole, as an example for Vector Sigma, our 2 most important things going into the Energon Invitational were what can beat Shockwave and what can beat Blaster. Like, they were the 2 sides of the spectrum that we had expected most players to play and be the most valued decks. So like pretty much anything that we were going to decide to play had to have a matchup against both of those decks. So like when it came to deciding what the final deck was in the final hours, it was very important to figure out if the Galaxy Prime deck could compete against those other decks, along with a variety of what we also assume would show up. And what was the last part? Pilot, deck, and characters.
Yeah, right? So your battle cards and the combo within, and then your actual characters, right?
Sure. Okay. Like for me, like a battle deck you should never have like the same battle deck for like a different character. So there would be a different battle deck for Battlefield Legend Optimus Prime than you would have Galactic Prime, so like both of those battle decks would look vastly different, because you would want to play to that stature, like to basically level up that character as best as possible.
Right.
With Battlefield Legend, you would want more actions that are efficient. With Prime, you want more upgrades so you can play off them. So
right.
But yeah,
what was the bread and butter combo, if you will, or what were you hoping to achieve at minimum with that deck? Was it getting the 3 utilities on to Optimus? Was it just getting him statted up as much as possible and swinging big?
I think the real truth is, like, we had a Galactic Prime deck in our gauntlet, and most of the time for me playing it, what I was undervaluing was that you actually don't even need to necessarily do those things. Like, it's more of like a benefit when it happens. You're like, oh, like I actually got the Matrix this time. It's like, oh, I actually got the energy pack this time. really what it came down to is that he's just an 8 attacker with 21 health that happens to have all this extra stuff, and when they happen, it's great.
Right. You
So
have to
like,
deal with him,
right.
otherwise you're going to get dealt with.
Right. So the goal was like, yeah, like anytime like you can put like throughout the game it kind of changes pages where like Matrix of Leadership is like phenomenal. Like the first turn you can get it is going to be the best possible turn because you will now get extra value throughout the entire game as long as your other guys are alive. And then the later the game goes, obviously energy packs become more important.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of like when you hit your utilities and if you're lucky enough to hit them off your flip, how much more that affects the game. So it's like it's one of those where like, yeah, at the end of the game, it's like if I can have 1 matrix and 2 energy packs, I'm probably winning that game. Like it's not easy to kill a 29 health Optimus Prime.
Right. So with we talk about strategy, we talk about turn order. What would you say is more valued? And it all comes down to the situation, right? But say you're going up against a character like Optimus Prime. He's halfway to being fully loaded. Mm-hmm. Do you try and bring him down with a disarm or some removal, or you've got a grenade launcher in hand? Do you try to take out one of the small guys? How do you make that decision that could either win you the game or lose you the game based on that one card play? You have one action play. What do you go after?
Yeah, this is definitely like one of those hypothetical questions that's like impossible to answer based on all the information. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, it's one of those like it definitely depends on what is on the Optimus. Mm-hmm. If like they have 2 Matrix leaderships on the Optimus and that is threatening enough from like the Flame War, the Skydive perspective, mm-hmm. Where they're going to be a threat, like say if they have a Noble's Blaster or an Energon X or something like that on them, so where they're already threatening some type of damage, you have to respect that. So you have to know like you have to really value how much damage you're going to do to the Optimus Prime. So if like there is a sparring gear on him and you can't like that like your grenade launcher plus your flips is only going to do, let's say 5-6 damage, and it's only going to put him to like a 12 or 13, and then like Skydive is just going to be able to kill your character off. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to make that call, right? Because it's like, well, I'm going to do this, but like if Skydive's going to be able to pick me off, and then I have to find another grenade launcher, find another thing, it's very tough. Now, if you can set it up to where you're going to get Optimus to say like a 20 or a 19, and you put him in the kill range, where in the next turn your disarm plus your attack might be good enough, that's the kind of decision you would have to weigh. You'd be like, all right, well, if I can get him to that level and that height to where he's only going to flip 2 blues next turn because I'm going to get rid of his sparring gear, I'm going to get rid of his extra health with the energy packs from the disarm, you would have to make that call.
Yeah, it's tough because you can go for the sure thing, even though it may not be as efficient. You're either overkilling or, right. But is it worth it to be going against a 2-wide or putting more damage? I mean, regardless if that Optimus has 1 health left or 2 health left, he still is going to swing for the same amount of attack damage. He doesn't get weaker, right? So, yeah, that's that pilot thing that we go back to is what decision do you make, and is it a make or break decision, and at what point does it become a make or break decision?
Right. It's very, very situational in almost every game because like there's games where like they don't have a matrix of leadership, so like the little guys probably aren't going to do any damage, so they're not as important. Mm-hmm. And then there's games where it's like, oh well, he has 2 matrix leaderships and he has a noble, like he has all these things. It's like the longer I let that guy live, the more damage it's going to do to me.
Yeah. What would you say is the most surprising thing? Whether you saw it and were surprised by it, or you didn't see it and you were surprised that it didn't show up at the most recent event.
I don't know. We predicted the meta pretty well. But I will say personally, I was most intrigued by my top 8 opponent, William Gomez, and his Nemesis Prime Tailwind deck. Now, not the Nemesis Prime Tailwind deck part. I actually we had Tailwind decks left and right, and even up to the day we were going to play Jetfire with Tailwind and Nightflight. So we weren't shocked at all that Tailwind and company showed up. But his sideboard actually intrigued me the most. He sideboarded into Springer Overwhelming Advantage. And it was a very, very interesting way to play Overwhelming Advantage in a 4-wide deck where all your guys has stealth. So you kind of just like suit the guy with stealth up and then go off, and you get Springer, which facilitates everything so incredibly well. So I was actually very, very afraid of my top 8 opponent in the sideboarded games, because I knew if I didn't draw, the correct cards at the right time, that he was going to be able to overwhelming advantage me, and there was nothing I was going to be able to do about it.
Yeah. Overwhelming advantage is a very cool card. Tough to pull off, right? Like you said, but very, very cool card. Neat part of the design space. What did you see cars? I know everybody likes to kind of bellyache about the one-sided meta, and it's easy to say that if you're not in there doing it every day like you are. But we didn't see any cliff jumper decks, right? Like we saw earlier in the year, or was that still a thing?
I mean, like, for what it's worth, there were some dangling, I believe, in the top 32. I believe my opponent in round 5, which was still a sealed game, but he was playing cars, and he ended up 6-3 with cars and finished 16th place. So, like, I believe he was cliff jumper downshift wheeljack, I want to say. I think that's correct. Other than that, there were some floating blue card pierce decks and stuff to that, but there wasn't anything dominant done by cars decks. And for what it's worth, I'm not shocked by that. I do believe that they didn't have a great matchup against bugs, and like it wouldn't be easy to see this from the outside there, but on the top tables in like those last 2 rounds, there was about 5 or 6 bugs decks, like kind of all in the running to make top 8, and only one of them got in, but they were there. They were at the top tables, so they were probably picking apart any of the cars decks or any of the tanks decks that may have been kind of like laying around.
So bugs, the deck that people love to hate. For those listening that haven't run a bugs deck or haven't come across it, can you give them the real quick elevator pitch on what you're trying to do with a bugs deck?
You have a Shrapnel, which is awesome against 50% of the meta, and it just soaks up a bunch of hits because everyone's trying to do the most damage, and he's like, I take 3. You now have this awesome card called Energy Transfer and Wedge Formation that can heal the Shrapnel, which can make it even more annoying for your opponents. And then in the end, you have 2 of the better characters for their star cost in the game with Kickback and Barrage. Kickback flips 8 to 10 plus cards whenever he flips, and Barrage is just a 5 attacker with Bold 2 most of the time, and he hits very, very hard. The deck is a very, very good deck. It by no means do I think it's going to go away anytime. This is going way back, but in an interview we did with Drew at Gen Con, he even states in the interview that Bugs is meant to be like the default aggro deck for new players to pick up and play. So I just believe that that's the type of deck that definitely isn't going to go anywhere. Now, I do believe some of the newer stuff, like the Tailwind decks that you had seen that were in the top 8, some of those decks might start to try and creep to try and replace the Bugs deck, but in the end, Shrapnel will still win all those matchups. He's just a very, very powerful card.
Right. And it also helps you learn certain things like turn order, who to flip when.
Yeah, because Bugs is very, very flip heavy.
Right. And
if
you fizzle, right, like if you do something out of order, then your synergy is kind of off. Am I wrong?
No, yeah, you're 100% correct.
Yeah. So we talked about, people getting in, beginners. Any tips for people prepping for the 2020 competitive season?
I will say this much. I feel that, and I'm not trying to knock anybody by saying anything like this, but I feel a lot of people like to come in and they like to be creative and they like to try their new things. And what I can tell you is that I believe there's enough information out there from the Energon Invitational that if you're a new player, I would personally suggest picking up one of those decks that have already shown its worth, that's already proven what it's capable of. So I would take one of those decks from the top 8, or any one of the reports you can see from the top 32, because all those decks were in contention to make top 8. and I would try and learn the game with a deck that's proven. And then as you get better at the game and you learn the turn sequences and you understand the battle cards better, that's when I would start tinkering with like a fun deck or like a pet deck, as you would call it. That's my best suggestion I can give any new player.
Right. Yeah, very similar. I don't know if you play video games like League of Legends or anything like that, but there's stats online, and
there's
the
builds.
top pros are playing these things with a 55% win rate.
Yep.
So instead of trying, like you said, instead of trying to do something crazy right off the rip,
yeah,
do what's working. It's not solved, but
no,
it's proven to have some power, right?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to learn. It's also like for me, it's one of those like get inside the head of the people that are good at this. You know, like how often do you play a game and you go watch a YouTuber that you like and that's good because you want to learn tips from him, or you watch a Twitch streamer. You know, it's one of those things like you should take the time to think how they think to help yourself learn and grow.
For sure. Hey, that's a great tip. And for those of you listening, don't be offended. Just listen to my man Dan. And then one of the things outside of probably swag, the big obelisk trophy that you got, probably a cash prize, you get to help design or design a card for a future set. Am I wrong?
Nope, that I do get to do that.
Okay. Have they been in contact with you at all, or is it?
The process has not officially started yet, no.
Okay. And then do you have any idea of it, how in-depth it will be? They're going to say, hey, you can choose from these 5 archetypes, or is it going to be willy-nilly?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you these questions. I don't know. I don't know what the rules are going to be. I don't know if like I'm only going to be able to choose a certain character from like an upcoming wave that they already have kind of coming. So like I don't actually know any of these things yet. Hopefully I learn them soon and I can maybe start answering questions about that stuff.
Yeah. Well,
I can say this much as like a long time card player, pretty much half of my life at this point, I am extremely excited to be able to do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's not only something really exciting that you get to make it, you get to play with it, but then when things have come and gone, you can have that framed and you can say, I remember when. Hey, you might be able to even show off your game design chops and get in good. Yeah. So when you come back to work, you don't have to, you're like, oh man, I'm back to work and I can keep designing.
Yeah.
But we know you'll do us proud and you won't do anything crazy like designing a roller card or
no.
So hey, I'll give it to you. Do you have anything going on with Vector Sigma or anything that you feel that my audience needs to know about?
For us, we have the Patreon that we've been doing now since they announced OP, which is where you kind of get to pick our brains on a day-to-day basis. We help build decks. We show you our decks. We do a lot of behind-the-scenes deck techs and special videos on like gameplay matchups of like specific meta things that we do, which is a ton of fun for us to do as a whole, to be honest with you. And then on top of that, like we have the charity event. We have this charity event coming up, which I can give you the link for if you want, just in case anybody wants to donate. It's for a good cause. It's at the end. I think it's the last weekend of the year, and we're doing it for an adoption agency for animals, which is we're doing it. We couldn't time it right to do the Toys for Tots like we did last year, which was unfortunate. But it's with the EI being so late this year and kind of just the whole weekends coming up, we just couldn't do it until after Christmas, which was unfortunate. But we just figured, hey, we'll do it for a good cause.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we'll take that link and we'll throw it right into the Apple and Google episode description. And awesome. Yeah. Dan, thank you very much for jumping on, giving us a little look into what was a crazy fun weekend. And, we would love to hear what you've got going on. Hope to see you at the next competitive event and can't wait to see what card you design.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a real pleasure coming on. I was really excited when you asked me.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for listening. and stay tuned for the next episode where we will be interviewing Stefan Pinkney, and then right after that, we'll be interviewing Kevin Allen.